What is up, all you radical thinkers? I am Matt, and this is Ungovernable. The word anarchy has been misconstrued, co-opted, and basically abused as a word for the last few hundred years. Today, we do a deep dive into what the definition of anarchy really is. So I will be sharing momentarily a segment of a full-length interview that we did with Ace Archist, talking about anarchy and the definition of anarchy and what the F it actually is. You can check out that full interview here, I believe. I'll throw the card up there. And if you're interested, I'll also share the link at the end of the video. Quick reminder, make sure to hit the sub button and a like and help us with the algo. We talk about stuff that YouTube and mainstream social media definitely does not want you to hear about. So definitely give it a thumbs up and help us defeat the algo monsters that are out there. Yeah, the word anarchy, even within Merriam-Webster's, there's a little bit of a Sybil complex going on here. Absence of government sounds great. And then the second definition is a state of lawlessness or political disorder due to the absence of government authority. Tell me you're not passing judgment on that one. A utopian society of individuals who enjoy complete freedom without government. Again, I'm not sure very many anarchists would tell you that it's a utopia, but they would tell you that it's utopian in the idea that everyone would be free to make their own decisions and voluntarily associate, and a couple of others that are basically passing judgment based off of public usage of the word anarchy, or I would make the argument misuse. So with that, I hope you enjoy this segment of the full-length interview that myself and Jocelyn did with Ace. And again, check out the full interview if you have time. It's a fantastic one. And I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so how good did we do? at the very baseline,
I bring it back to my life.
Yeah. At the very baseline, what is anarchy?
So, obviously, right, whenever you're describing anarchism or explaining it, you always have to go through this, because most people have an understandable preconceived notion that it's obviously chaos, right? And it's obviously been presented that way in many media formats. So it's right. There's no fault for anyone who's like, oh, anarchism, how could that ever work? That sounds crazy. So the burden is very much on the anarchist to explain this. So no one should feel any like, oh, you should never feel like foolish for thinking, oh, well, this couldn't work, because it's not quite intuitive all the time. So, but basically anarchism is like, from a philosophical standpoint, is basically the idea of each person having the highest claim to their lives and their property that they incorporate, right? So like, if I have the highest claim to myself and you guys have the highest claim to yourselves, then the only way for us to interact in a moral sense would be voluntarily through like consensual interactions, right? So anarchism, one of my favorite philosophers, Roderick Long, has this really great summation of anarchism, which is that anarchism is essentially the idea that it is unjust to treat other people as your property. And it's basically that consistently applied. So the reason the anarchist is opposed to the state is we view the state as an essential intruder into our boundaries, right? So if I have a right to be secure in my boundaries, meaning my body, my property, and the state we view as an institution that inherently invades those boundaries, then we would view the state as an inherent aggressor. Aggression is like kind of this catch-all term that we would use to describe acts that encroach into another person's boundaries, or a type of an act that would subject another person to another person's will. Like if someone is like violently assaulting you, they are trying to subject your body to their will in some sense. So that's just an example, but that's kind of the gist of anarchism. It's basically the idea that, to restate it real quick, like I have the highest claim to myself, you guys have the highest claim to yourselves, each person has the highest claim to themselves and their property, and no one may rightfully intrude upon that or usurp their claim.
That's I think that's a fantastic way to look at it. I've also heard people just even kind of like break down the origins of the word anarchy, and it's kind of
Yes.
like, traditional meaning of essentially no masters,
No,
right?
yeah, no
Yeah.
masters, no rulers. And by master or ruler, the anarchists take this specifically to mean a person who encroaches into another's boundaries to subject them to their will.
Yeah.
So like if someone like sets up like takes over your property, the anarchist, not all anarchists, I'm not going to get into like the disagreements of different anarchist schools here, but basically, from my own perspective, if you incorporate resources into like your ongoing means, this becomes what we would call your property, right? Very like so. And if someone intrudes upon that property, they're essentially dominating you or dominating your boundaries in some sense by you trying to usurp your claim. So that any person who tried to do that, and I think there are many examples of states doing this, we would consider that person to be a ruler in that regard. Basically, anyone who encroaches into the boundaries of another person to subject them to their will.
Yeah.
I feel like
Good.
in the last like 3 years, you've got an opportunity.
Yeah. Well,
Quite an opportunity.
That was going to be one of my questions was, so I don't know if you've watched it yet, Ace, but The Anarchists on HBO Max.
I have not yet, no.
Yeah, so what's really interesting is I thought it was going to be a hit piece when I first heard about it, and it doesn't seem to be playing out that way. It really seems to be a somewhat level-headed, as level-headed as possible viewpoint of, kind of the anarchist movement. It follows mostly stuff that happens at Anarchapulco. But I was surprised. It's really kind of like a semi kind of like level portrayal of, and it also does a good job of kind of showing the diversity that's also within the anarchist movement. It's not something that's a monolith or anything like that. But it definitely seems like anarchism, at least in terms of public awareness, is on the upswing. What would you attribute to that? Like, why do you think that has come about so recently?
So Emma Goldman has this she was an anarchist, a famous anarchist. She was famously deported by Woodrow Wilson to Russia. But she has this quote
yet another shitty thing in his column.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So just yeah. So she had this great quote, which is like that the cops are creating more anarchists than I ever will. And I think the state's constant boot on the throats of many people over time increasingly kind of leads to this, right? It at least makes people second guess some of their assumptions, right? Because a lot of people have this assumption that, well, our system isn't perfect, it makes mistakes, but we generally live in an overall just society and just system. And I think the more and more people are awakened to like some of the examples of that not being true, I think that starts people to question the legitimacy of their rulers, really. And I think certainly, like, with the lockdowns and things like that, that's obviously a huge one. But that's, just on top of a huge history of like state violence that we could imagine. I think that's definitely led to a lot of people kind of being more open to this idea.
And there you have it. That was a absolutely fantastic interview with Ace Archist. Check out the full length one if you have the time. It is a little bit lengthy. Most of our lives do run an hour plus sometimes, but definitely check it out if you have the time, or at least a piece of it. And I hope that we can keep making some of this content for you all. Again, a reminder, subscribe, hit the notification bell, thumbs up, like us, or upvote us on the blockchain. So that would be hugely helpful for us as well. Anything you can do to help us with the algo. And so with that, I'll see you next time. Peace.